Well, we move on now to the final category, the compound category. So it's something that perhaps most of the audience are a little bit more familiar with, certainly in terms of the bow style. But Jim, you said that as we've progressed through this tournament, moving from longbow to traditional through barebow to compound, if you like, the equipment gets a little bit more advanced.
It does, and this is about as advanced as it gets. It's what these guys are shooting here is tantamount to a rifle. You've got a very accurate bow. It's got two sights on it. It's got a rear sight called a peep sight, and then you've got a magnified scope at the front. Unlike the bows we've seen previously, a normal bow, you pull it back. The further you pull it back, the harder it gets. A compound bow's a bit different. Starts very hard to pull back, but then it gets easier as the string goes over the cams and the pulleys that are involved. So you end up holding, when you're at full draw, holding almost nothing, and just a few pounds, rather than sort of 40, 50 pounds that you'd be seeing on the other types of bows. It really is a very, very accurate bow style. That doesn't mean it's easy. Everyone's got an advantage, so it's all about compounds. You're expected to get the maximum score. It's whoever drops the score. It's a little bit different with compound. It's a very interesting bow style. I think we're going to see some very high scores. It's going to be very close at the top of this one.
Well, here we go. It is the compound women's bronze medal match. Italy featuring yet again, and again up against an Austrian, Irene Franchini from Italy against Ingrid Ronacher of Austria.
Now, the one thing we're going to see differently in this is the shot process is probably going to be a lot longer. We'll see him at full draw for a lot longer, and the shot's going to take a little bit longer to happen.
Irene Ronacher, 10 Franchini, +1 for Austria.
Two very solid arrows. And as predicted, we're on a slightly different set of targets for these archers, because being compound, being sighted, those targets are going to be pushed back a little bit further. They're going to be shooting slightly longer distances to challenge these sighted archers. It's the only category in this tournament that does have a sight. So that needs to be balanced slightly.
I suppose it makes it neither easier nor harder whether the target's closer or further away. You have to adjust to that distance, and of course they can see the distance, but they don't know exactly what it is. Whereas on a range, you know exactly the distance you're shooting.
Where you're looking at, with compound, you are very much distance judging is king here. If you're even a tiny bit off with these type of bows, it's the difference between an 11 and a 10. I imagine throughout this sort of section of the competition here, we're going to be seeing a lot of 11s, a lot of 10s. It's really is a very accurate bow style. But yeah, and it's very similar setup to target. Although from my experience with compound and 3D, you tend not to have too high a magnification on your scope, because if you've got too high magnification, you bring it up on the 3D target, all you're going to see is just a sea of brown. So you tend not to be too magnified, although there's usually a bit of magnification there. But these guys are off to a great start. We've got a 10 and an 11. It's going to be another tight one for bronze.
We move on to the second target.
It's quite refreshing to see some different targets now. But you notice these archers aren't using their fingers to loose the arrow. They're using what's called a release aid. So you get a very, very straight shooting arrow. There's nothing of your fingers to foul the string up.
So now Austria is leading by 6 points after 2 arrows.
I mean, you get a lot of people that think because the way the bows are with the sights and the let off, you think, oh, compound's easy. And if you're a target archer and you go from a recurve to a compound, your scores will improve. That's definite. But everybody's scores improve, and it's the top archers that keep their score improved. They don't drop points. It's about not dropping points rather than scoring points as a compound. And it is tough mental. I've got a lot of respect for compound archers. Us traditional archers, we like to poke fun at various bow styles, especially the compounders. But it comes from a place of respect because there's a tough discipline, and you've got to be switched on to do well in this game.
Well, a big gap here. The Italian now trailing by 6 points.
Just making those micro adjustments on the sight, just a click one way or other can be outside the 11.
Well, Ronacher walks away looking fairly happy with her treatment of the third target.
So 2 arrows on the line, 8 maybe 10 for both the athletes.
So some friends of mine on the run up to the Worlds back in 2017, they'd go out for walks with their rangefinder to practice range finding. It's such a key component, sort of making sure you can range a target well. Because if you that sort of level, a couple of clicks off on your sight, it's all over. So you've got that's such an important skill is range finding.
And the diff, I suppose, from shooting in a target scenario is that you've got quite a big area to aim at and to centre on, whereas that third target's minuscule, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I quite like that. I quite like something small to aim at. It really focuses me in. I mean, I'm a big fan of the saying, aim small, miss small. And that really does come into its own in 3D, because it's nice to sort of just pick out a little spot. You know, if there's a little bit of shadow or there's a little white spot right where you want to put the arrow, it really focuses the mind, really draws you in, gives you something to really aim at.
Well, a slightly bigger target for the fourth target, but Franchini trailing by 6 points. This is going to be a big ask for the Italian. Ingrid Ronacher, 11, 10 and 8 so far in this bronze medal match, is in control.
Five.
Well, we actually heard that Franchini's last arrow was marked up by 2 points, so a 5 there from Ronacher for a 34. Where's that gone?
That is on the line.
Is that enough? Is that enough?
They look like they're in the same spot.
So it will be probably a 1 point victory. Let's see.
It looks like it may well be an 8 for Franchini, and from 6 points behind, she's done a lot, but she hasn't done it enough. We wait for confirmation. They're having a really good look at this arrow.
They're going to scrutinize that so closely, especially when it's so tightly contested. She's done so well to bring that back.
5. It doesn't matter whether it's a 5 or an 8. It wasn't enough. And Ingrid Ronacher from Austria takes the bronze.